we'll dismiss the kids if they haven't already gone back, and I think they have. But if not, you can bring them to classroom A. And will you give Robyn a hand as she comes here today? Hi, darling.
Oh, good, I can see the people. Okay.
Yes, you can see them. Sometimes it's a good thing.
No, it's a good thing.
So, yeah, let's jump right into it. I know your story well, so I don't want to skip over anything that would be important, but just not everybody knows about you, and you're not always the first person to, control the room and tell everybody your whole life story. So tell us where you're from and what you deserve to have such a great husband.
Right, okay, so I am married to him. We are almost 2 years in. So we're a newly married couple. We reminded each other yesterday that we're still learning each other, even though we're old, or I'm old. Maybe I'm older than him.
No, neither of us are old.
So what am I doing? I'm just starting with my story. So I grew up my dad was of the Mennonite faith, and my mom was Pentecostal, and they met in YWAM, somewhere in the States. So my mom is Canadian, right? No, my dad's Canadian, my mom's American. And my dad went south, went to a YWAM school. They met there, fell in love, and got married. And they decided to become missionaries. So I am the third. I am the youngest of my family. And I was born on the mission field, mission training, I guess, more so, I think, in Wisconsin. I don't actually know exactly where I was born, which Dan thinks is weird. But obviously it was not a conversation. It obviously was not a conversation I had growing up with my family. So I was born on the mission field and then spent the first 5-6 years of my life in Indonesia for the most part. And my parents were dorm parents. We lived for a season, and then we lived in a village for a season with our neighbors being the locals. So it was interesting. I learned the language. I used to be very fluent, but I don't remember any of it, obviously, because I didn't practice it. And then we moved back, and we moved into a little town called Arden in Manitoba, which is about 2 hours from Winnipeg, Canada. If anybody doesn't know where Manitoba is, it's in Canada. And thus began my life. You want me to keep going? You want to ask me a question?
Sure, yeah, keep going.
So somewhere in my journey, I don't think I need to tell a lot of details, but somewhere in my journey at a very young age, I embedded a belief that I was not enough, that I was not worthy, that I was bad, that I was evil, and that if I didn't perform correctly or be whoever was around me needed me or wanted me to be, that I wouldn't be accepted or loved, and that I would be left behind. So for whatever reason, that was kind of my handbook, so to speak, that dictated how I moved in life, how I made friends, the type of authenticity that I practiced, just that whole, everything moved around that one core belief, or I guess it's multiple core beliefs, but I guess that one core belief that at the very bottom of who I am not worthy, like you said, right? Not worthy of love. And my therapist said it to me the other day. She said, once you think that you see something or know something. So like, you want to buy a new car, you will always see that car wherever you go. It's like, oh, there it is. Oh, there it is. And so this belief that I had developed at that young age, I began to always see. And I'm not saying that it always was the other person. In some cases it was, but not always. I always saw the truth that I was nothing, and that I wasn't lovable, and that I was replaceable, or that it would be easy to not love me or to abandon me. It would be easy to walk away. And so many circumstances, and a lot of them, I think people were not aware when it happened that they were speaking that truth to me, but it was driving home the truth that I had embedded into my little brain at, I believe it was probably 3 or 4 years old, that I was dirty and evil and unlovable. And then you add on religion, bad religion. I think religion that was the best that maybe my parents knew or understood. They kind of met in the middle, and Dad and Mom, they became Baptists. So they met in the middle, and they became Baptists. That just was my life. And this girl, before she allowed all of the insecurities completely rule her, I loved life. I wanted to live life. I wanted to see things. I wanted to experience things. All of it was really, it was like, I felt like there was this big wide world for me to discover. But I very quickly learned that it wasn't safe. And if it wasn't safe, it was likely my fault that it wasn't safe, right? So I slowly began to develop some coping mechanisms that I am grateful for. I say there are many versions of Robyn because every single version, I think, saved my life at one time or another and kept me alive. But they're not serving me anymore, and I think they're okay with me healing past them. But I developed a lot of masks and a lot of ways to keep myself safe, to keep myself accepted, so that I wouldn't feel rejection or judgment, all while believing that if those masks slipped, what they would see was really ugly and dirty and unlovable and replaceable. You can interrupt me now.
I wouldn't dare.
No, for real.
I wouldn't dare.
I'm giving you permission.
How many of you in this room have struggled with that feeling of not being enough? Yeah. So, I mean, more than 50% in the room that have felt that.
Pretty normal.
At some point, one of the things that happened is at some point in trying to survive and make it through another chapter of your life, you felt like you had to walk away from God or the idea of God. Can you talk me through that?
Yeah. I don't know how long ago it was, 7 years ago. So I began deconstructing to a certain degree, probably 12 years ago, 13 years ago, mostly because of circumstances I needed, and it wasn't for my circumstances, it was for somebody else's. So one other thing about me is that I do have this very strong core belief that every single one of you is loved deeply, and that you are smiled upon, and that God is singing over you every night, and the words that he is singing are beautiful and precious and the truth, and that you are loved, that you are highly favored, that you are beautiful to your very core, and that you were born his creation and he created you in his image. That is not a hard thing for me to do. I do not have a hard time looking at people, no matter what they're going through, no matter their choices, no matter what. I don't struggle with seeing others the way that I see myself. So while I was deconstructing because I needed to deconstruct for somebody else. I needed God to be somebody else than what I possibly had learned or believed him to be as this judgmental, angry God, because somebody that that was in my life and that I cared about needed God to be kind and full of grace and forgiving. And so I needed to deconstruct to that place of this is who he is. And I did for him. It obviously still at that time it was very hard for me to apply ever to myself, but I had it, and it was great because I was able to extend that to other people as well, which also made it messy in church because I was a youth pastor, I was a kids pastor. What do you call that?
Children's pastor?
Children's pastor, kids church pastor, children's pastor. I was a woman, I led women, I did retreats, and I loved it. It was a passion, and the reason it was a passion was because I knew I could understand how locked up people felt by bad religion or by the understanding of who God is based on whatever story they had been told or whatever message that they had been given.
So how is that, I'm going to stop you a little bit. How is that manifesting? Because I think when we hear the word deconstruct, we assume that means we're tearing something down. But, and sometimes that's the case. Things need to be torn down and thrown away. But it also, for me, is the idea of like returning to the original first love, an idea of who God is. Because a lot of the things we've returned to, or we've found, are things that I was told and taught very young, only then later on for that to change and be distorted over time.
Yeah.
But the idea of God being loving and merciful and not angry is usually every altar call, right? I mean, I know there's some hateful ones that happen too, but most of the time it's like, hey, come, God loves you, everybody's welcome, and just, you know, he's here and he's paid the price, and no matter what you've done or where you've been, you're loved, right? We've all heard that. And at some point, for a lot of us, that changes. And how did that manifest where you were looking around, whether it's people you cared about or friends or people in the church? What did that look like for them to be living under the idea that God was angry?
So obviously it became a very big passion. I think I'm answering your question. Mm-hmm. That I wanted other people to experience a love that I felt like was greater, because the originator of me going after a grace-filled God, I wanted deeply for him to find freedom from, whatever it was. So I don't know if I'm answering this right. I pushed really hard. It became a deep core belief that the people around me needed to know that they were loved and that they were seen in a way that is oftentimes impossible for you or I to see them, especially if we are not rooted in the true and honest person of who Jesus was, and the true and honest one who our higher power, our divine, our God is. And so I just was like desperate to do that. And I feel like I was really good at it. People were saying, I feel God's voice when you're talking to me. I was able, I don't know how because I wasn't embracing the love, but for some reason I was able to extend it. But what happened in a church that still was wanting the rules, the regulations, and the box, and everybody needs to look the same, sound the same, and ask no questions, I became not a safe person for that church. So I became a negative and dispensable. And so it was one of those things where you grasp something, you hold on to it, and you're super excited about it, and then you find out, oh, the people around me don't believe this, they don't understand it, and they don't want it. And so then I became dispensable. And then you will find me very quickly, if I am in a place where I feel fear or danger, I will very quickly retreat. And I will pull back, and I will hide. I'm a caver. That is just what I do. If I don't feel safe, I cave. Cave meaning like a rock in the, in the room in the rock. That's what I meant by cave, like not cave, like fall in, words and whatever, cave and fall down. So it manifested in me getting something that was really beautiful, but also understanding that this really beautiful thing was not necessarily something that the religious community wanted as a part of their ethos. They didn't want it. It wasn't good for what they were trying to accomplish, I guess. And so out of that came a whole nother raft of wounds and trauma and all of that kind of stuff. But it also, the mixture of, and this is where I think mixture is so dangerous, the mixture of bad religion and really awesome grace is that it can also leave you stuck in relationships and places where you shouldn't be and where he doesn't want you to be. And so I had mixed the two, and I stayed in places and things that were unhealthy, but I believed that my loving God wanted me to be there, and that was what I was supposed to do, but also that was all that I was worthy of. Yeah. So then when I decided enough is enough, I can't do this anymore. And it was selfish. I know that I was in a very selfish state where I'm like, I'm done, I can't do this, I'm done. It felt very selfish. It felt very selfish, but yes, in hindsight, I think it wasn't selfish. But when I decided that, I wrestled with it. I wrestled with it with the people that I told, who were also people that likely were not the people to have the conversation with. I wrestled with it, and I came to the conclusion that the only way that I could save myself, because I had grown up believing I was the only one who could save myself, right? I believed that everyone around me, I was dispensable, I was dirty, I was ugly, I was not worthy of love and of safe love and of long-term commitment love, all of those things. Because of that, help me with this, babe. I decided that I had to, in order for me to keep myself safe, I had to walk away from God. Because if God is that's requiring me to be where I am not my most authentic self, and where I really don't love myself, and where it's constantly being driven home that I am not worthy of love and kindness and value, then I don't know that this is a God that I want to serve, and this is not a God that I want to share with other people, for sure. And this is not this God. I remember when I made the decision to make a drastic change in my life, I remember saying, I am signing the divorce papers from God because he is not safe. And he has proven himself to not be safe through the people around me. Not necessarily that they were all doing wrong, but because I was seeing through a certain lens, that's how I saw him. And so then I just kind of walked away, and I said, I'm good. I've been doing this my whole life. I know that God was involved, but I didn't necessarily see it. I've been protecting myself my whole life. I have got all the tools. I know how to do this. I know how to make things happen. I know how to keep the room calm. I know how to make people like me, even if it's only for a short period of time. I know the right things to say. I know the right things to do. I had it on lock. One of the things I was the proudest of was that I was an amazing mom. And it wasn't because I was an amazing mom, per se, although I think I was a pretty amazing mom. It was that I knew all the things. I just knew all the things, right? So I figured I've basically gotten as far as I've gotten on my own. I've done this. And it's been messy, but I don't want the God who's demanding that I don't have possession of my own body, of my own mind, of my own heart, of who I am, and deciding who I am. I just didn't want that. I just didn't want that higher power. Whatever. And I did. I completely shut down from God. That was 4 years ago, probably 3 years ago. I completely shut down. 100%. It was done. And I have found that I've been missing. Go ahead, ask your question.
No. So we're falling in love at that point. And she's
Right.
like, hey, so just so you know, I'm not into this God thing anymore.
True.
And I was like, you don't mean that. She's like, no, I mean it. And if you know anything about me, my favorite words to say just about are, it'll be fine. It's good. We're good.
Everything's going to be
It's going to be fine. But that was a serious conversation to have. And I mean, we're going to get to the other part of it here. But now that I look back, I realize it was a setup, because for what we're doing today and the people that God is drawing to this church, having the pastor's spouse have such a recent process of abandoning so much of her faith, if not all of it, is a very, very useful story, impactful story, and real life experience for people that are walking into this church who have done the same or are in the process of doing the same. So when she talks about it, I don't think I've ever walked away from faith. My faith looks completely different, but when she talks about why she had to come to that point, it's not a story, it's real. It happened. I witnessed it. It freaked me out on the inside. On the outside, it'll be fine. On the inside, I was like, oh, so that's great. So we're falling in love, and I want to marry you. And by the way, I'm a pastor, so you not believing in the work I do is a problem, right? But it wasn't, because even in this relationship, and I want you to continue, I'm sorry, but even in this relationship, I was forced with asking myself the question that even with my own fiance or wife, am I also okay with her going through her own journey?
And not fixing it.
And not fixing it. Because if I stand up here and tell you guys you can go on your own journey, the hardest thing growing up as a pastor's kid is that what was offered to the people was not always offered to us as children. The same passes, the same grace, the same, like, you have 100 chances type thing. I mean, it probably was offered, but it didn't feel like it. And so we always felt like we were held to a higher standard. As a matter of fact, we were told oftentimes we're held to a higher standard. And because that's what mom and dad, especially my dad, grew up believing and being emulated for them. So, that's the point where you go, like, what you're saying out here has to also apply to your family, to my daughters, to my wife. Like, the same opportunity to work out their own salvation has to apply to them, even if it doesn't look pretty or look clean, or cleaned up. And then that's their journey to go through. So that happened on my side, but it was also, I believe, incredibly brave for you to go there and to do that, knowing that what we were coming into together potentially, that it wasn't ideal.
Well, and also, I, just as passionate as I was about people understanding the grace of God and that depth of his heart, I was also just as passionate in that moment of breakup to see people set free from a God that bad religion had imprisoned them to. So it was a risk for Dan, for sure, to bring me into a setting like this, because I would hear people's story and I would be like, okay, well, that's not a higher power. Like, I wanted so desperately to see, I said after I got divorced, I was like, I should never do a women's conference with married women, because I have such a burning in my soul for some of the trappings that came with religion and being with a partner, right? So I have been on a journey back. I am desperate for wonder. Wonder is, I think, one of the things that I want to find again. It was one of the greatest parts of my, if I were to remember anything fondly of my relationship with God, it was the wonder. It was the wonder of who he or she is, the way that they moved and did things for all of humanity, and the part of them that we maybe miss is the joy, but also the sadness that they feel when we're hurting or when we're going through something. And I wanted to come back to that place of wonder. And I said to Dan over Christmas, I was going through old notes, and I said to Dan over Christmas, I said, I want you to talk about the journey back to wonder, because for so many of us, Christmas and God and church and all of the traditions and all of the stuff can be very, very triggering, and can also feel very just like rote. It's just something we do, right? And I want it to be authentic, and I want it to be real, and I want it to not be me trying to look like something for you or for me. I don't want to come into church and be the pastor's wife, or God forbid, the first lady. I don't, I'm not looking for that. I want to be, I think that's what Jesus came for, was equality, was for us all to be equal. So we're all on an equal playing field. There's not a pastor who's here, and then the pastor's wife who's here, and then just kidding. And then you have your deacons, and then you have your singers, and you have your prophets, and you have all of these things that we have, right? And there's all of these different levels, and I was like, I don't feel like that was the intention of the gift, because the reason I have a lot of feelings around Jesus and the sacrifice, but what I will share is that I do believe with all of my heart that bad religion was developing hierarchies and developing castes, and God was like, that is not the intention of the gospel. And it will never be the intention of the gospel. And I am going to do what you need me to do in order for you to shut your mouths and for everyone to understand that we are equal. And so therefore we have equal opportunity to his love. We have equal opportunity to the wonder of who they are, and to the security, not of mankind, because whether you're a bad religion or whether you're just a human being, we are all seeing how people can treat each other. But more importantly, that's not the end game. The end game is that my divine loves me, and at the end of the day, the song that is being sung over me as I go to sleep, and that is in Zephaniah, it talks about the song that he sings over us. It is one of love and of kindness and of grace and of mercy and of something beautiful that he sees that oftentimes we don't see, but we know by science that when we're hearing those words, when that is coming into us, it begins to change our mind. But I wasn't allowing that. And so I was losing my wonder. And so I'm back to trying to allow that and giving permission maybe, because I know that God he never forces himself. I will say I know that he has never left me. I will say that I know now that when I left him, that he came with me. I know that he was proud of me and that he came with me, and that in the walking out that journey, that I was able to make room for the wonder and for the whispers and for the kindness. And now it's a flushing. And I will tell you, if I'm being completely honest, I am probably at the most, I've got to use the right words because somebody will call me on it. I am probably, broken is the wrong word, I am probably at the heightened state of dealing with my PTSD. So, recognition. So for some reason, God believes that I'm ready. And so, like oil rises to the top, it's all coming up. Dan can attest to this. It's not pretty. But the beautiful part of that story is that it is in a safe place that those things come to the surface.
So if you're finding safety in a community
That's where I was going
and
to go.
beginning to explore that, and then things start feeling more raw and more sensitive,
More dangerous.
it's because you're progressing, not going backwards.
Right.
And that part of the healing process is like taking the scab off, taking the stuff around it that's causing the wound to never heal. The scab's not a good example, but when wounds get infected, we have to deal with the infection in order for the wound to heal, or it just keeps festering. And dealing with the infection is usually more painful than just letting the wound be the wound. But there's a point where we get it's more painful before it gets better. And sometimes in the more pain is when people run back to what Richard Rohr talks about, and I did a message last year on, and that is that order. They're trying to run back to the order and get what they had before all this started. And there is no way back to that. You either stay in chaos or you go to reorder, which is reestablishing something that is not order, but it's not chaos. It's learning to live in the chaos and still function in the chaos and continue on your path. And I mean, it's all of us are subject to it. All of us are in those processes. As a matter of fact, I was thinking here, how many of you here actually at some point during Robyn talking heard a part of your story in it, legitimately? Mm-hmm. And that's the point, because the lie has always been for her is that nobody feels what she's feeling. Everybody else seems to be going about their life and they're not feeling these things. And yet it's clear that most of us have experienced these things, and it has plagued us for a long time, but there is a way out.
Yeah, and I think that...
Or through.
I know we're getting close, we're at time, but I do want to say that a big part of my journey, even to wanting to go back to wonder, has been in this community. Because there has been room for me to not be the pastor's wife, or to not have to be perfect. And there's also been room for me to be very guarded. I have people who pursue me, and I would like to say I don't reject them, but I put up a bit of a wall, and they keep pursuing, or they recognize, or they read, and they pull back, or they whatever, but they're not making a judgment about me. in that. It's very easy for me to go to people think that I'm a snob, or I think I'm better than everybody else, and that because I can carry myself that way, and that is just the Canadian in me. There's no anything, that's just the Canadian, British, English, whatever in me. We just hold your head up high and eyes forward.
And pronounce all the consonants.
Right. So a big part has been whether I know you or talk to you, or whether I see you just every Sunday, or whether I forget your name and you remind me, and there's no judgment in that, or whatever. I think that I've found a place where I feel safe with the community, and sometimes I struggle with even calling this church, only because church has done so much damage. There's so much damage for so many people. Religious trauma is larger than life. It's a real thing, and so church, there's just that word sets me off. But I have found a community, and I love that the community is growing, and I want to see the community grow, and I want to be part of that journey. I want to come alongside and do that with everybody else, and it's going to obviously take me time. It was just this week that I said to my therapist, I really just want to put down my sword. I'm tired. I'm tired of constantly carrying my weapon around to make sure, and I'm not using it to stab other people. I'm using it to make sure that I keep my heart safe and my mind safe, so that I don't, it's not working, not because I'm not safe, just because it doesn't do what you intend it to do. It's not actually doing a good service for me. It's actually causing me to push more. And feel less safe, I guess. But.
And think about this, you're approaching, quote unquote, the pastor's wife, right? And sometimes you don't realize that person that you think is here to be something might actually have just as much fear as you have in you approaching them or them approaching you. And for years and generations, we have forced people to be something and to be not human. Like my mom had no room for decades to be human. She was supposed to be the best mom in the church, and she was. The best wife in the church, hold her head up high, and what that looked like was like 19, 20 hours a day, waking up at 6 o'clock in the morning or earlier to get her kids to school, working, tending to the home, dinner, clean up dinner, laundry after dinner, no time for herself, all to keep up. Yes, she loved her family. Yes, she wanted to serve and love her family well, but so much of it was like she didn't have room to just be human, to have an off day. And when she did, if she was sick, when she was sick to the point where she couldn't get out of bed, everything fell apart because she had to be everything to everybody. And that is unhealthy for any of us. And so the same room that she has to be herself, you have to be yourself. And if she has the room to be herself, you better darn know that you do. To be you, to come with what you've got. And what you don't have is okay. It is. And that's why taking away the power and position of religious leaders to lord over your life is so important. It's not just unhealthy for the people that are a part of a congregation. It's unhealthy for the pastor and their family to hold them to a standard that nobody can meet and to not be able to be human. I always am doing my best to be an upright, moral human being that loves people well, but I'm gonna disappoint you. And so is she. And I'm gonna miss things and forget things and all of those things. But if you think that you're dealing with anything more than just a human being who has done his or her best to dedicate their life to creating a space where people can come and worship and encouraging them on their journey of faith, if you're expecting anything more than that, you'll be disappointed. But that's a good thing. Because guess what? You won't be held to a standard that you can't meet. And it starts at the top. And beware, I'm gonna say this because this will end up going out on Facebook and probably a podcast and all that kind of stuff. Beware, if you're in a religious space where the pastor and their family and wife are held to such a high standard, having to be perfect, and you think that's not one day gonna also affect your life, you have a new day coming, as the song says. You have something coming because eventually that pressure will fall on you. It's not in the beginning. You start getting a leadership position in the church, boom, it's on you. Start serving in some capacity, leading people, boom, it's on you. Hey, you know, brother so-and-so, sister so-and-so, you shouldn't be doing X, Y, and Z. And it's not about calling you higher into a higher form of morality. It's about presentation of who we are as a leadership so that people will want to come here because they emulate our lives. Please don't emulate my life. Really, I am struggling just as much as you are, and we're doing our best together. And that's what a healthy congregation looks like, church. That's what a healthy community looks like. Amen?
Well, it's supposed to be messy. If it's not messy, then it's not very likely that it's God, or that it's growing, or that it is something that has the potential to be beautiful. And I guess so sorry about the people who had to get the chairs. I told Dan, when Dan and I talked about it, I was like, I don't want anybody to know. I want to have last minute to make decision. I don't know if I want this going out on Facebook. I don't know what I feel about this. And so it was very last minute that I said, okay, I'm willing to do this. And it's not because my story is so whatever. Many of you have stories that are, but it's not the Olympics. Somebody keeps reminding me it's not the Olympics. It's not comparison.
Trauma Olympics.
Right? It's not trauma Olympics. But I think maybe why I felt like this was important is because I want you to know me, and I can't get to know everybody as quickly as I want to, but I want you to know me, not as broken or not as weak or not as whatever, but as just a human being who is so passionate about all of us just not just surviving, but thriving and learning to love ourselves, and then out of that, loving others. And when Dan spoke about hope last week, I did a little mind thing, and I realized that the hope that we're giving is coming out of love. And if we don't love ourselves, and if we don't feel love from the divine and from the greater, it's so hard for us to give an authentic hope to the people around us because we can't give it to ourselves. And I want us to be a community of people that grows, and we grow, and there's room for everybody. And it's not just for what looks like what we want it to look like. And I want us that are at the beginning of this, I'm constantly thinking about that prophecy where we're in the forest and there's a big open piece of land and we're scared to run out there because we don't want to get shot. I am desperate for each and every one of us to get to a part of our journey where we choose to run out of the forest and run into the open piece of land and realize that we're not actually going to be shot, that we are going to find our community and we're going to find safety in that community. Not saying everything's going to always be right, but there is safety in knowing that the people that you are surrounded by understand humanity, understand that you're human, want to make room for your humanness, but also want to discover the wonder of who God is and who the divine is, and then how deep and cavernous this love is that none of us have even begun to wrap our brains around. Yep. And so therefore we have no right to define it for somebody else ever. But I'll shut up now.
That's great, amen? That's good. Great. So we're gonna end, actually, Robyn's gonna demonstrate running in heels as if this is the forest and that is the oasis back there. You wanna show us? Hey, let's stand up and we can pray together, is that all right? Did you guys enjoy this? Y'all think I married up? I rebuke that. Now we're gonna be the TV couple, the pastors. Father, I thank you right now If you're hearing my voice, $777. I'm just kidding. Some of you can't even handle that. All right. Lord, we just thank you today for this story. And it's a beautiful story and one that represents many of our journeys here today. And so I'm just asking that if nothing else be done today, let people be encouraged that wherever they are, as long as they're being authentic to themselves, that they're in the right place and that God has never left them. And so, Father, today we ask for encouragement and love to just wrap our hearts up, even in a moment where maybe we don't feel it from anything or anybody else. We break those lies that people are not enough. We break the lies that people are dispensable or not worthy. And so as we leave here today, we just thank you for your grace and goodness that will go with us, reminding each of us that there's only one us. We are unique, and the story you're writing with us is between us and you. And that's a beautiful story that you're writing, a beautiful tapestry you're weaving with our lives. And so let us embrace even the moments that feel like setbacks or mistakes are really just opportunities to grow and to find a new form of order and purpose and journey in our life. So thank you today in Jesus' name. And everyone says, Amen. Love you guys so much. We'll see you soon.